The execution was set to begin. On the cold, metallic surface of Trial Platform 7, a child stood alone. She was small, no older than 8 years, her fragile frame trembling in the harsh alien wind. Chains bound her wrists, heavy and cold, far too large for her tiny hands. Her once bright blue eyes were now filled with fear and confusion. Across from her, in towering seats of authority, the Xeldar High Council watched in silence. Their leader, Chancellor Virak, raised a clawed hand, signaling the start of the proceedings. The accused stands guilty. His voice echoed through the massive hall, transmitted to billions across the galaxy. This human trespassed upon restricted Xeldar territory. As per our laws, the punishment is death. There was no outcry, no protest. The Xeldar spectators watching the event, both in the courtroom and across their empire, remained silent, indifferent. To them, this was justice. A lone human ambassador stood at the edge of the platform, his face pale with desperation. Ambassador Lewis, a seasoned diplomat, had spent days begging for mercy. "This is madness," he shouted, stepping forward. "She is just a child. She did not know your laws. She was lost." Virak's mandibles clicked in amusement. Ignorance does not excuse violation of Xeldar space. "She wandered into one of your outposts by accident," Lewis pleaded. "This is not justice. This is murder." The Chancellor leaned forward, his many black eyes narrowing. "And how many of our kind have your species killed in war?" Lewis clenched his fists. "Wars fought between soldiers, not against children." The Xeldar leader waved a hand dismissively. "The law is absolute." He turned to the executioner, a tall Xeldar warrior gripping a long energy blade, its tip glowing with deadly blue light. "Proceed." The child whimpered. She did not understand why these monsters wanted to kill her. She had been playing, running after a butterfly in the fields of her home colony. Then she had wandered too far, and now she was going to die for it. The executioner stepped forward, raising the blade high. Lewis moved instinctively, lunging forward to shield the child, but was immediately restrained by guards. He struggled, his voice breaking. "You don't have to do this. This will not be forgotten. Humanity will." The blade came down. The moment stretched into eternity. Then, silence. A hush fell over the crowd. The executioner stepped back, the blade dripping with red. The child's small body collapsed onto the cold metal floor. Motionless, lifeless. Blood spread across the platform, reflecting the bright Xeldar suns above. Lewis went still, his breath stopped. His mind refused to process what had just happened. His vision blurred as he screamed in horror. The crowd remained emotionless. To them, it was just another criminal, another punishment. To humanity, it was a declaration of war. The execution was broadcasted live to every major system in the galaxy. Billions of aliens watched, and among them, humans. They saw everything, and they would never forget. The broadcast spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On Earth, in space stations, on human colonies across the stars. Billions watched. The image of the little girl collapsing to the ground, her blood pooling beneath her, burned itself into their minds. There was no debate, no hesitation, no politics, only rage. Governments across human-controlled space received a flood of messages. Citizens demanded action. Soldiers in every fleet volunteered in numbers never seen before. Even those who had once believed in peace clenched their fists, their eyes dark with fury. In the United Human Council chamber, the mood was ice cold. The leaders of Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies watched the execution replay again and again. None spoke. Then, the supreme commander of the fleet stood up, a veteran of countless wars. His voice was calm but deadly. "What do the Xeldar say in response?" An advisor swallowed hard. "They claim it was just law." A long silence followed. Then, a simple question. "What forces do we have within striking range?" The War Council checked their systems. The 3rd, 5th, and 7th fleets are nearby. Fully armed, they await orders. The Supreme Commander nodded. His voice, steady as stone, sealed the fate of an empire. Send the order. No diplomacy. No negotiations. We move now. Across human space, ships activated their engines. Warships designed for planetary assault, stealth frigates meant for surgical strikes, and massive carriers loaded with soldiers vanished into hyperspace. The Eldar thought the matter was over. But they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history, because humanity was coming. The Eldar did not expect retaliation. They had ruled their sector of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. No species had ever dared to challenge them. Their fleets were vast, their armies feared, and their laws absolute. To them, the execution of a human child was a minor event, a message to lesser species that Eldar law was to be respected. So when their border outposts began falling silent, they were confused. At first, they assumed it was a technical failure. Then came the distress signals. Outposts along the outer rim of Eldar space sent frantic messages before being cut off mid-sentence. Entire stations gone. The Eldar High Council demanded answers. Their admirals scrambled to mobilize fleets, but no enemy ships were detected. Then, the first reports from survivors reached them. Black armored figures, moving like shadows in the night. Silent ships that appeared without warning, destroying key targets with surgical precision. Elite Eldar warriors, trained for battle, were wiped out before they could even fight back. And worst of all, no prisoners were taken. The humans had not come for war. They had come for vengeance. Entire planetary governors vanished overnight. Eldar command stations were hacked, their defenses shut down. The few Eldar warships that managed to engage the enemy found themselves outmatched, outgunned, and utterly annihilated. And then the first true warning came. A single Eldar colony world, Mech-Vera, woke up to find a human fleet hovering above them. A message was broadcast across the planet in flawless Eldar language. This is justice. This is consequence. You took one of ours. Now, we take everything. Then, in front of billions of terrified Eldar civilians, the sky turned to fire. The planet's defenses were obliterated in seconds. Military bases were leveled with precise orbital strikes. Every Eldar warship in orbit was reduced to scrap metal. And when the bombardment stopped, humanity left behind one single message. A broadcast sent across the entire Eldar empire. It was the execution video. But this time, it was different. The footage of the little girl's death played in reverse. The blood flowed back into her body. The blade lifted away from her small frame. Her eyes opened. And then, at the end of the broadcast, came 4 final words. We are not done. The Eldar Empire had never known fear. Until now. Panic spread through the Eldar Empire like a wildfire. For the first time in centuries, the High Council felt true fear. They had believed humanity was like the other species they had conquered, weak, fragile, easily broken. They had believed the execution of a single human child would pass without consequence. They were wrong. The Mech-Vera massacre had shaken the Empire to its core. Billions of Eldar citizens had watched in horror as their mighty defenses crumbled in mere hours. Their once invincible warships had been shattered before they could even fight back. Their military outposts had gone silent, their commanders vanishing without a trace. Humanity was not at war with the Eldar. Humanity was hunting them. Across the Empire, Eldar civilians whispered of the shadows. They spoke of human strike teams that appeared without warning, eliminating key officials in the dead of night. Governors, warlords, and military leaders. None were safe. Entire fleets were destroyed before they could mobilize. Military supply lines were cut. Strategic planets were bombed with pinpoint precision. The humans did not fight for territory. They did not seek surrender. They sought punishment. And then, Humanity delivered its final message. A transmission was broadcast directly into the Seldar High Council chamber. Security measures were useless. The feed cut through their encrypted systems as if they were nothing. The chamber darkened. A single image filled the screen. It was the face of the child they had executed. Her lifeless eyes stared at them. Then a voice, calm, but filled with something far more terrifying than rage. You thought there would be no consequences. The image changed. It showed Seldar planets burning, their warships drifting in ruins, their great empire falling apart. You were wrong. Chancellor Virak trembled. For the first time in his long, powerful life, he understood. They had made a mistake, and now it was too late to stop what was coming. The Seldar High Council was in shambles. The once mighty rulers of the empire, who had never feared anyone, now sat in silence, their expressions grim. Reports flooded in from across the empire. More planets lost, more fleets destroyed. The humans were moving too fast, too precisely. Chancellor Virak clenched his claws. How? How are they doing this? A trembling general stepped forward. Their attacks are unlike anything we've ever seen. They don't follow traditional war tactics. They strike, vanish, and leave nothing behind but wreckage. Another council member hissed. Then we must call for peace. The room went deathly silent. The idea of surrender was unthinkable. The Seldar had ruled for over 1,000 years with absolute dominance. They had never once bowed to another species, but humanity had given them no choice. Virak exhaled slowly, his pride burning inside him. Send a message. Request negotiations. The transmission was sent. A desperate plea for peace. For hours, there was no reply. Then the humans answered. The message appeared across every Seldar communication channel. No encryption could stop it. No firewall could block it. A single human face filled their screens. It was Admiral Ethan Graves, Supreme Commander of the United Human Fleet. His expression was cold, unyielding. Negotiations, he said, his voice heavy with contempt. You think you can execute a human child and then ask for peace? The council chamber froze. No, there will be no peace. You don't get to decide when this ends. We do. The message ended, and with it, so did the last hope of the Seldar Empire. The Seldar High Council had never felt true helplessness, but now they sat in their once grand chamber, watching their empire crumble. Humanity's response had been merciless. Planetary governors, warlords, and military leaders had been eliminated. Fleets that had ruled the stars for centuries were reduced to debris. Entire planets, strategic worlds once thought untouchable, were now under human control. But the humans didn't conquer. They didn't colonize. They destroyed. The Seldar pleaded for peace. Again and again, they sent transmissions. They promised reparations. Promised they would outlaw their cruel laws. Promised they would never harm another human again. No response. Then the attacks changed. It was no longer just military targets. The humans were erasing their history. Great libraries, Seldar cultural archives, the very monuments that told their empire's story, wiped from existence. Their once glorious cities lay in ruins. It was as if humanity had decided that Seldar did not deserve to be remembered. And then, humanity's final message arrived. The transmission reached every Seldar, from the lowest worker to the highest official. It was the execution video. Played one last time. But this time, after the little girl fell to the ground, after her blood pooled beneath her, the screen didn't fade to black. Instead, a sentence appeared, a sentence that shook the Seldar to their very core. The last thing your empire will see before it dies is her face. Then, the human fleets advanced one last time. The Seldar Empire had fallen. Their warships were gone. Their mighty fleets, once feared across the stars, now drifted as lifeless wrecks. Their great cities, symbols of their dominance, were reduced to ash. But the worst part was the silence. There were no more transmissions, no more desperate pleas for peace, no more cries for mercy. Humanity had made sure of that. The final human assault had been swift and brutal. The last Zeldar-controlled worlds had seen the sky burn, their defenses shattered in moments. Their leaders had been hunted down, one by one. And when it was over, the humans did not stay. They did not claim the Zeldar worlds. They did not take their resources. They did not demand their surrender. They simply left. But before they vanished into the void, they left one final reminder. A massive structure standing in the ruins of the Zeldar capital world. A monument built not for conquest, but for warning. At its center, a single screen played on an endless loop. The execution of the human child. Her face, her final moments, would be the only thing left of the Zeldar's once mighty empire. And across the galaxy, every species watched. They had all feared the Zeldar once, but now they feared something far greater. Because humanity had sent a message that no species would ever forget. Harm one of ours, and we will erase you. The galaxy never forgot. The ruins of the Zeldar homeworld stood as a warning to all. The once mighty empire had been erased, its history wiped clean, its people scattered like dust in the void. No one dared to touch what remained. The silent cities, the broken fleets still drifting in space, the abandoned colonies, left to decay as a monument to humanity's wrath. And at the heart of it all, the screen still played. The last moment of a human child. The galaxy had watched her execution in silence. They had seen the Zeldar justify their cruelty. None had spoken up. None had interfered. And humanity had remembered. Now, every species knew the truth. The humans were not conquerors. They did not seek war, nor did they hunger for power. They did not demand tribute, resources, or control. They only demanded one thing: respect. Because to harm a human, even one, was to invite annihilation. For centuries after, the stars remained quiet. Empires rewrote their laws. Governments reconsidered their policies. The once lawless sectors of the galaxy suddenly found newfound order. Not because of fear of conquest, but because of fear of justice. And so, the galaxy whispered the name of the species that had burned an empire to the ground over a single innocent life: humanity. And they never made the mistake of crossing them again.